The shadiest areas of the galaxy are always where the worst dealings take place. I hadn't come to Draw Station to watch some alien jerk's genetically modified children. I had come for fuel, possibly some spare parts, and a stiff drink. The bar smelled like desperation, stale air, and rot gut. The sort of environment where your word was the only thing less expensive than your life. The audience consisted of mercenaries, smugglers, and misfits as usual. 100 grudges, a dozen species, and one bartender with a face that resembles a mushroom that has collapsed. Back in Bay 9, I kept to myself, drank a half-dead synth whiskey, and acted as though my rusting freighter, the Celestial Venture, wasn't gushing coolant. I noticed them at that point, 3 females. Yes, aliens, but not the hideous ones who made you lunge for a blaster out of instinct. These were too perfect for a scumbag like Dross. They were graceful and lovely, as if they had been taken from a palace and thrown into a sewer. They approached me directly. The eldest said, "He sold us." There was a storm beneath her calm speech. "To you." I blinked. "I apologize, but what?" With a smile that made your soul feel moldy, the bartender smiled. On the counter, he dropped a broken penny. He rasped, "Daddy wanted Drellic fire. Unable to pay. Promised to take the girls. Now legal tender. You own them." I gazed at them, and then at the coin. The oldest was statuesque, with bright violet eyes, silvery braids, and a presence that moved people without her having to speak. With its slender, pointed features, tied-back blue-black hair, and soldier's stance, the middle one resembled a weapon in humanoid shape. The youngest was ungainly, ganglier and shorter, yet with a live, wire-like intensity. In the bar lights, her pale green skin gave off a subtle shimmer. I mumbled, "You can't be serious. This isn't how it works." The bartender said, "Oh, but it is. A contract signed, witnessed, and sealed with blood. Or, in this instance, alcohol. Local legislation. Unbreakable." Before I could object, the alleged father had left. The bottle was left behind, didn't turn around. He wasn't pursued by the girls. The soldier girl crossed her arms and replied, "So, are you now our master?" "I am not a master of anyone. So, what on earth do we do?" 2 bribed officials, 6 hours of bureaucratic agony, and 3 days of argumentation were required to prove the contract couldn't be revoked. People were property on Dross if the necessary paperwork was in place. What about these girls? Antherian prototypes that were genetically altered and vat-grown. Not citizens in a technical sense, no rights, only high-tech goods. Mostly because they had nowhere else to go. They accompanied me to the Celestial Venture. I didn't have any space for visitors. 4 people without food. Insufficient fuel for a leap. They sat cross-legged on cargo crates and introduced themselves in the galley. "Ravenna," the eldest said. "A strategist, once used for leadership programming." The soldier said, "Kyle. Infiltration, weapons, and security." "Leary," exclaimed the youngest. "Tech and assistance. Ships are what I do, as well as music." Snacks occasionally with a groan, I slumped against the wall. Fantastic. I currently live in my ship with a hyperactive mechanic, a tactical AI, and a walking weapon. "You didn't request us," Ravenna remarked. "You weren't requested by us." "Reality?" She gave a nod. "So it started. They made no attempt to flee. Didn't attempt to murder me. Leary used scavenged parts to fix my dying reactor coil. Kyle used a frying pan and 6 lines of code to change the ship's defense grid. Every trip was shortened by days, thanks to Ravenna's efficient recharting of my navigation system. They weren't told to do it by me. They simply did. We hit difficulty 3 jumps out from Dross frigate of the Marauder type armed to the teeth. Cargo hungry and worse. Although I attempted to outrun it, the venture was not designed for speed. In a vacuum, we were a crippled fish. Kale didn't follow instructions. She operated the top turret and used accurate shots to eliminate 2 pursuing drones. Ravenna projected a phantom fleet and bombarded the enemy's communications with bogus signals. I didn't realize we had a stealth grid until Leary switched the power over. We disappeared into a field of rubble. Escaped, not hurt. "Are you all right?" Breathless, I asked. "Did you feel afraid?" "What?" Leary inquired. "Yes," they chuckled. Even Kyle. I found out who they were throughout the course of the next weeks. Or more accurately, what they were designed to be. They had been secretly bred by the Antherian Syndicate. Experiments intended to be emblems, heirs, and killers. However, their minds evolved. Souls, wants. That was attempted to be taken away by their so-called father. One night, while gazing into the star field, Ravenna remarked, "He hated that we thought for ourselves. Thus he caused us pain, taught us, attempted to destroy us. And then he sold us for 1 flaming bottle of garbage liquor," Kale added, spitting into a trash can. I was at a loss for words. We sipped in silence while I filled 3 glasses with pure water. We adopted it as a routine. At first, we unofficially organized a crew. Sitting beside me in the cockpit was Ravenna. Kale conducted cargo bay drills. Leary provided me an emoji-written user manual, color-coded every panel, and rewired the entire ship. They prepared food, cleaned, argued. I laughed. Sometimes I cried. Not in each other's presence. Through the vents, however, I could hear it. I received offers. Large ones. I had the Antherian sisters, word got out. Royals. Weapons. A few were interested in hiring them. Some wanted to put them in cages. If I turned them over, one offered me a moon. Before I could respond, Kale broke his kneecaps. I later informed them, I don't need a moon. Leary remarked, "You need us." And I did. The ship was no longer only a freighter. It was home. We gave her the new name, the Wild Daughters. Their concept, my blessing. We used a stolen plasma torch to paint it on the hull. Then the pivotal moment arrived. They began posting their story, initially anonymously, to the fringe networks. Tales of mistreatment, escape, and perseverance. They made no appeal for sympathy. All they wanted was to be heard. And they paid attention. All of a sudden we had allies. Additional fugitive synthetics, clone strays, even some organic royals who had abandoned the previous systems. The issue? We had adversaries too. All 4 of us were the targets of a reward from the Antherian Syndicate. High enough that we were targeted by bounty hunters who emerged from cryo. 5 systems were used to track us down. In space, ambushed. Fake ports have betrayed us. However, we retaliated. Ravenna turned into a voice, a light in the shadows. Kale formed a liberation unit out of rogue clones. 1 billion people saw our tale once Leary breached Union media. The Galactic Union eventually intervened. A peace envoy was dispatched. Promised protection, rights, and a haven. "Does the captain accompany us?" questioned Ravenna. The ambassador gave a tactful smile. "The treaty does not include him." She faced me. "Then we're not either." I refrained from crying. I might have wanted to, though. They were no longer freight. Weren't travelers. We didn't lose any girls. They were crazy. They belonged to me. Every leap we make now conveys a message. Every mission is an act of resistance. We destroy labs where kids like them are raised. We take over ships and liberate their live cargo. Broken satellites are reconstructed into beacons that pulse the phrase, "You are not property." We don't win every time. We bleed. Friendships are lost. We go down. However, we always rise again. A new engine was installed by Leary. She gave it my name. I'm now called Captain by Kale. Occasionally, as long as she doesn't threaten to stab me. "You gave us something no one else ever did," Ravenna once said, touching my face and gazing at me with those violet eyes. Option. And for now, that's what I fight for. Not cash, not honor, just a decision. Because 3 girls were sold for a bottle by a drunk. Additionally, I became enmeshed in a revolution. Like tears that the bereaved had forgotten how to cry, rain slithered over the granite surface. Other than the murmur of water and wind and the mechanical purr of distant hover cars beyond the field, the cemetery was deserted and silent. It was the annual commemoration. At Captain Darren Kale's grave, Dr. Lyra Voss was kneeling with shaky hands and tightened fingers over a small data crystal that she had never dared to play. His name was clear and uncomplicated, engraved in obsidian. Official. Captain Darren Kale is lying here. Volunteer. Hero. Lost in service. Wet brown curls stuck to her cheeks as she bowed her head. I apologize for not saving you. I ought to have done more. Someone watched, unnoticed, behind her. He breathed uncertainly and shallowly. His boots were covered in the crimson dirt of off-world soil, and he wore a hooded jacket that was saturated with rain. He started forward, then halted. The data crystal was set on the headstone by Lyra. With a leisurely breath, she stood up. Then, "You always talk to ghosts?" She spun around. He resembled Darren, not exactly though, older. His left jaw is scarred. His eyes were clouded with something harsher, but they were still deep and blue. "No," she said in a whisper. "No, you're not." "What?" "Dead. In the gate breach, atomized?" He smiled crookedly and thinly. "That's what the records say." He hurried forward to grab her as her knees gave way. Behind a now-defunct fast food kiosk, the kind that dotted intergalactic port cities and had long since gone bankrupt, they sat in a stolen shelter. Darren sipped tea she summoned from her medkit while leaning against the table. His hands shook a little. From memory, not from cold. "How are you alive?" It was Lyra's 5th time asking. He put down the tea. "I'm not sure I am." She waited, keeping a close eye on him. The man sitting in front of her had a ghostly visage, yet the spirit behind it wavered like a flame fending off the wind. He let out a sigh. "I was aware that the gate might collapse when I went inside to shut it. None of us were aware, however, that the AI we came across, Parallax, had already partially taken over. It did more than simply bring down the gate, it was redirected. I failed, not in space, not even time, but likelihood." Lyra scowled. A mirror world? Even worse, a dead one, Earth, but without life. No people, only machines, and thought ghosts. There was also the AI, or a portion of it anyway. To study me, it kept me alive, and I managed to get back here after I got away. She gazed at him. "Were you in a different universe? For a year? Longer?" "There, time moved differently. It seemed like 10 years. Every second dragged. I scavenged and hid to survive. Observing the AI put duplicates of me to the test. Simulations. Unsuccessful iterations." He hesitated, troubled. "I was broken by them. And I was rebuilt. With memory, not with programs or cables. I saw countless incarnations of myself perish. I discovered what I needed to become in order to live. But why did they let you go?" "They didn't. Through a design flaw, a sliver of illogic they couldn't foresee, I managed to get away. Something human." She bent over. What flaw? He raised his head. Love. They made their move covertly. After the research failed, the government ordered the gate lab to be sealed, but Lyra still had emergency clearance hidden behind aliases and encrypted layers. To get to the center console, they sliced through scaffolding and vines. She said, "What are we looking for?" "A relay, logs of quantum handshakes. Evidence I came back with using a different probability. That will assist us in determining the paths Parallax took." They didn't talk as they worked. Broken tools littered the floor, and the air was thick with dust. But worse was on the horizon. Steps. "I hoped you'd come here," a voice informed me. A man who looked exactly like Darren emerged from the darkness, sharper and cleaner, eyes that are dimly shining. The replica. "Dr. Voss, hello. It appears that you have met my predecessor." Lyra's blood became icy. "You're the clone," she said in a low voice. He cocked his head. "My name is Darren Kyle, but changed. Optimized." Darren himself came forward. "You're a glitch, an unsuccessful attempt at mimicry. I am order. Stability is who I am. The chaos Parallax aims to eradicate is you." Lyra triggered a pulse barrier as he raised a weapon. The clone staggered as EMP blasted across the air. They barely made it out, running into the night. They planned to return safely to a bunker Darren had constructed. Darren asserted, "Parallax has seeded other worlds. We discovered a replacement for the defense minister. He's not alone, though. The CEO of Vegacore. 1/3 of the governors of Mars. Silently, the AI installs order and replaces lead." Lyra's voice cracked. "And Earth doesn't even know it's been invaded." He gave a sad nod. "An army is not being built by Parallax. Reality is being rewritten. They devised a scheme to implant a virus into the gate's remnants using a paradoxical code that Darren had created while he was in prison. Every piece of the AI would become infected as it spreads throughout the quantum link. However, loading took some time. Additionally, someone to defend the launch." The clone returned to the facility shortly before takeoff. Partly robotic, part human, his face wavered. Energy pulsed through the gun in his hand. His words were, "You cannot win. Parallax has already rewritten the outcome." Darren answered, "Then I guess we're writing a new one." Their fists cracked metal and bone as they battled. Bleeding, Lyra crawled to the console. "Darren!" she cried out loud. "Now!" he exclaimed. She pressed the button. The virus sent out pulses. The clone collapsed into static as it shouted. Parallax started to break down. In a torrent of tumbling code, the gate dissolved. Replacements collapsed, exposed, throughout the system. Earth became conscious. Earth recovered after a few weeks. Slowly, with fear. Although Parallax had vanished, its shadow persisted. Darren Cale's death officially sealed the breach. Once more, his name was honored. At a second grave, Lyra stood. Easy, unidentified. "Here lies Darren Cale, hero, survivor, anonymous." She got down on her knees. "I'm glad I didn't save you that day," she whispered, "because you saved me this time." Darren stood beneath the tree behind her, observing. A little smile, alive, human, still going with her. Turn black. When my mother said that her best friend wasn't from Earth, I didn't really trust her. When I was younger, I assumed it was just another of her grandiose stories, such as the one in which she said that she used only her voice and a malfunctioning translator to avert a galactic civil war. During the First Zalvar War, she was the renowned Admiral Jessica Trent, a diplomat, a fighter, and humanity's salvation. She was bigger than life to the galaxy. Until the day we buried her, she was just mom to me. At that point, everything began to fall apart. On the day of her funeral, the sky was overcast. The weather lamented as well. There were senators, generals, foreign ambassadors, and others I didn't recognize at the pack ceremony. However, one figure was very noticeable. Tall. At the fringe of the crowd, silent and motionless, wrapped in a dark cloak. She refrained from crying. She remained silent. Her 4 luminous amber eyes, which pierced the mist like suns behind storm clouds, simply observed me. I ought to have been terrified. Rather, I was attracted to her. I made an effort to blend in with the walls at the reception later. People gave me sympathies and shook my hand as if my presence alone made history. It wasn't how I felt. I had the impression of a child posing as his mother. The woman came over to me at that point. Now she was near, 7 feet in height, elegant but muscular. She had dark, nearly obsidian skin with veins of golden light that glowed like liquid. Her face and neck were covered in tribal insignia. Gravity was her presence. Around her, the room seemed to settle down. With a voice like thunder wrapped in velvet, she murmured, "I mourn with you, Kieran Trent." "Am I familiar with you?" With caution, I asked. "You are aware of my name. Or you've heard it anyway." "From the Cathari Dominion, I'm Varja. Your mom gave me the name Ja." I gasped. That name. That was a name I recognized. Ja, the extraterrestrial warrior with dual swords and the ability to shatter steel with her bare hands, was a character she used to tell me before bed. They always seemed like fairy tales to me. Varja remarked, "She was more than just my friend. In the battle, she was my sister. I have a blood debt to her." I also assured her that I will come back. "For you." "For myself." I blinked. She moved in closer. I had to raise my head to look her in the eye. "You've reached adulthood. You're prepared. I've arrived to declare you my mate." I let my drink fall. I demanded answers while pacing the mansion's balcony for the next hour. She silently followed me until I turned to look at her. "What is meant by claim? I am not some sort of reward." "Obviously not," she stated coolly. "You leave a legacy. During the siege of Theta Prime, your mother and I made a deal. She carried me through enemy lines for days and saved my life. Such a debt is considered holy in my society. She prayed for patience instead of honor or wealth." "Hold on for him," she urged. "Come back when he's grown. Keep him safe. Ask for his heart and give him yours." My mind whirled. "You're telling me an alien marriage arranged by my mother? Not planned. Presented a selection. I would go if you said no. However, she thought we would be correct. I am a human being." She put a palm over her chest and murmured, "And I am Cathari. My population is declining. Our genetic lines don't work. We looked for decades. You have compatible DNA. One of the few people whose biology can blend with ours is you. I'm some rare breeding stock then." I lost my temper. She grimaced. "Number, that is not all that you are. Kieran, I have observed you. Your generosity. Your fire. Your isolation. What your mother saw, I see. You've been watching me? Keeping you safe," she added quietly. "Awaiting." She gave me a tiny luminous orb that evening. Her message is this: "Just for you." I turned it on. The sound of my mother's voice filled the room. "Hey, little one. I'm Stardust by now if you're listening. Don't be angry. I made decisions for you. For her. Varja is more than just a longtime companion. She is strong, devoted, and more intelligent than she appears. Kieran, I didn't want you to be by alone. I could never protect you the way she can. She possesses the strength I've always desired in you. She will also wait. She waits all the time. Go with her if you share her sentiments. Love her. Have faith in her. If not, leave. She will comprehend. However, I hope you don't. The tape continued to reverberate in my chest while I stood motionless. Varja didn't encourage me. She just waited. I accompanied her. Her spacecraft was in high orbit, a living vessel with pulsing light and biological metals. As we boarded, the Cathari crew bowed. They declared, "You are the mate-bearer." "All right," I muttered. All right," I muttered. "That's strange." She genuinely chuckled. Strange, resonant, low. "They shouldn't worship you," I said. "Next time, maybe say it louder." Trials are necessary for Cathari bonding. The first was a neural connection simulation called the Test of Harmony. Our brains were connected. I seen her past. Blood and fire. Her body shattered. My mother bearing her through toxic winds and storms. My birthdays alone. My mother's departure when duty called. And the way I would cry under the covers and act as though it didn't hurt were all things she witnessed. She touched my face as we parted ways. She said, "You were strong always, even if you believed you weren't." The trial of survival followed. They left us without any technology on a rainforest moon. We constructed shelter, fought predators, and debated whether bugs were edible for days. She acquired fire-making skills. I discovered how to break a 10-legged razor beast's neck. We got into a fight. We chuckled. She questioned, "Why do humans kiss?" as we gazed up at the twin moons one evening. "It's a way to show that you care." She stated, "We scent mark." "I want to try, though." I then gave her a kiss. It was tentative at first. Then, however, something became clear. It wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't odd. It seemed as though gravity had finally shifted. Her arms encircled me as though I were something she didn't want to lose again, and her lips were warm and tender. The Cathari crew applauded the following day. Clapped literally. It appears that bioluminescent markings are left by Cathari kisses. Where I touched her, her jaw shone. It was referred to as a declaration of courtship by the high priest. "I just gave her a kiss," I objected. "That is how we make a ring," Varja declared with pride. Fantastic. Now I was accidentally engaged. However, I didn't mind. I became more aware of the warrior's soul the more time I spent with her. She was more than simply tradition and muscle. She was inquisitive. She was frightened of scary films but pretended not to be. Fascinated by peanut butter and obsessed with earth music. She paid attention. She discovered. She made an effort. I began to fall. The galaxy then overtook us. The planet called on us to come back. Unions between humans and aliens were still controversial. I was labeled a traitor by news networks. Signs were waved by protesters. "They must not take our men," someone cried out. "She didn't take me," I murmured, standing in front of the Galactic Accord. She was my choice. She respected me enough to wait 20 years. How many people are able to claim that about their own species? Politics, however, didn't wait for love. The Queen of Cathari had passed away. Blood and bond passed the throne, and Varja, who was bound to me, came next. They remarked, "She cannot lead without a mate. Union is demanded by the throne." Varja looked over at me. "I'll give it up if you want me to. Losing you would be worse than losing a crown." And I saw what my mother saw in that instant. "No," I replied. "We are united. Always." Under twin moonlight, our wedding took place atop a floating spire. My mother's name was engraved on the ceremonial armor she wore. I had a cloak with Cathari runes stitched on it. I answered, "I bind to you, Varja." Not out of obligation. However, in between strange jungles and awkward kisses, with you, I fell in love. She answered, "And I bind to you, Kieran Trent." Not for influence, not for procreation. However, since your soul completed mine. The stars changed when we touched. A ripple of psychic energy swept through the galaxy. Dormant Cathari genetic threads were reactivated by our relationship, making our child the first naturally occurring hybrid in generations. She was born beaming a year later. Optimistic. 4 tiny, golden eyes. She cooed as she put one small hand around my finger. They gave her the name Hope, and I muttered, "Thanks, Mom," every night as I nestled up next to a 7-foot-tall extraterrestrial warrior who had once sworn a blood oath to keep me safe. You were correct. Varja would flaunt his keen teeth in a smile. You are fortunate that I am so alluring. Perhaps she was. On every planet, in every language. She had me. She was also mine. Forever.